Hello everyone, my name is Chaitanya, and in this video we are going to see the topic related to the Indian Contract Act 1872. The topic name is the basic concept of contract and essentials for creating a valid contract. So let's start with this. The definition of the term contract is given in the section 2 subsection 8 of Indian Contract Act 1872, which says that agreement enforceable by law is a contract. So what does it mean? It means in order to create the contract, first we have to create an agreement between the parties. And if that agreement is supported by the law, if the agreement has backup or the approval of the law, then only the agreement becomes a contract. So if any agreement does not have the support of law, then it will not become a valid contract. For example, if there is any contract that involves injury to a person or destruction of property of someone, or if there is any contract which denies a person the basic human rights, then such contract will not have the support or the backup of the law. So while making the contract, we have to make sure that the contract that we are creating does have the support of law. Now, how to create the contract? That is also a question. Basically, there is a procedure which we can follow and create the contract. The procedure basically starts with the concept of offer. One person has to give offer to the another person. Then another person has to accept the offer. Once the offer is accepted, we get something called as promise. In promise, we have to add something called as consideration. Then we get the term agreement. And in agreement, when we add the enforceability, we finally come to the concept of contract. So that's how we can create the contract for any normal transaction or any complicated transaction. Okay, let's see now the essentials of the valid contract. These essentials of the valid contracts are given under Section 10 of Indian Contract Act 1872. A total of 10 points we can see on the PPT. Let's start with the first one, that is offer. Offer is considered as the beginning or the starting point of every contract. If there is no offer, there is no chance of creating the contract. So one person has to give offer to the another person, and the person who gives the offer here is called as offerer, while the person who receives the offer is called as offeree. One more thing we have to remember in case of offer is that when the offer is given, it has to be in the form of a request, because the offer may be accepted or it may be rejected by the other party. So the offer can never be in the form of a order. It has to be in the form of a request. So, would you like to buy my motorcycle for 50,000 rupees? That can be considered as an offer, but you will buy my motorcycle for 50,000 rupees cannot be considered as offer, because the first one is in the form of a request while the second one is in the form of a order. So that we have to remember. Second point is acceptance. If the offer is accepted, then we have a chance of creating the contract. But if the offer is rejected, then again, there is no chance of creating the contract. So acceptance is also one of the essential conditions for creating the valid contract. Now, what do we mean by acceptance? It means when the party has agreed to the offer, when the party has accepted the offer, we call it as acceptance. But the question comes that do we have to accept the whole offer, or partial acceptance is fine? Suppose the offer is given by a person and it has 5 components in it. Now, out of 5 components, a person or the offeree, we can say, is ready to accept the 3 components, but he is not okay with the remaining 2 components. So can he accept that offer in a partial way? The answer is no. Whenever the offer has to be accepted, it has to be accepted completely. Then only the acceptance is considered as valid. Okay, so that is the second point for us, acceptance. Third point is consideration. Now, what do we mean by consideration? Consideration means something in return. In Latin, it is called as quid pro quo. Now, whenever the contract is created, usually it is created between two parties or more than two parties. Now, these two parties have to do something for each other's benefit. And whatever they do for each other's benefit, that thing is basically called as consideration. The things that are exchanged in the contract, they can be considered as consideration. Take a simple example here. Suppose you go to the grocery shop and buy a packet of chips. Then what benefit you are giving to the other party? Means the shopkeeper. You are giving shopkeeper the money, maybe 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 20 rupees, whatever it is. And what benefit the shopkeeper is giving you? He is giving you the chips. So both the parties are doing something for each other. Both the parties are exchanging something. Both the parties are giving something to each other. That is basically called as consideration. In most of the contracts, both the parties give consideration to each other. But there can be some exceptional cases where only one party is giving consideration to the other is not giving any consideration to the first party. But yeah, in most of the contract, both the parties give consideration to each other. Now, the next one we have is intentions to create legal relations. Sorry, before that, we have to see capacity to contract. A contract can be created by a person, but only if he or she has the capacity to do that. So in what cases we say that a person has capacity, and in what cases we say that a person does not have the capacity? That is a question. The answer is a person has capacity to do the contract when the person is major in age, person is mentally sound, and when the person is not disqualified by the law. In these three situations, a person is considered as eligible or capable to do the contract. Now, the first point, that is age of majority, let's discuss that. What do we mean by the age of the majority? We know that major is a person who is 18 years or more in age. So if someone is below the 18 years of age, he or she is technically not allowed to do any contract. The second one is that a person should be mentally sound. Mentally sound means a person should be able to understand the terms and conditions of contract, and they should be able to understand the effects of that contract on themselves and on the other party also. If they can do that, we will say that they are mentally capable. And the third one is that a person should not be disqualified by the law. Sometimes the law disqualifies a person from doing a particular contract. For example, we are an exporter and we are exporting the product to, say, any other country in the world. And if the war has started between our country and their country, then both of us will become disqualified person for each other. And till the time war is going on, we won't be able to do the contract with each other. The status of both of us will be alien enemy. So that is a thing. Age of majority, then mentally sound, and the third one is person should not be disqualified. These three conditions are there under the point of capacity to contract. The next one we have is intentions to create legal relations. What does it mean? It means when the contract is created, both the parties get some rights and some obligations on their head, and parties should know what will be the rights under that contract, what will be the duties under that contract, and if those duties are not fulfilled, then what can happen or what legal action the other party can take against us. If that is clear and still the parties are willing to do the contract, then we will say that parties have intentions to create legal relations. The next one is performance is possible. In short, the contract should be practical. Just because the contract is created does not mean it will always be possible or practical. If it is impossible to perform, then it is not a valid contract. For example, if I say that you pay me 10 lakh rupees and I will make you immortal. Is it really possible for me or for anyone to make any person immortal? No. So that kind of agreements or that kind of contracts will never be considered as valid contracts. Basically, this agreement will never get the support of law, so it will never become a valid contract. Yes, but buying or selling a property, that is perfectly possible and practical contract. So the law will support that and it will become a valid contract. Then next one we have is not void. Now under this, the law has given a list of void agreements which will never get the support of law and they will never become the valid contract. Now, what are the examples of that? We can take the example of agreement in restraint of marriage. Means due to any contract, if a person is not able to get married, then it is not a valid contract. Law will never support such contract. A contract by which parents are not able to take care of their children is also not supported by the law. So such agreement will never become the contract because it will not be supported by the law. So before you create any agreement, before you create any contract, you have to see the list given by the law of the agreements which are declared as void by the law. You have to see the list of agreements which are declared as void by the law. The next one we have is lawful object. The purpose of creating the contract should always be lawful. Now, when do we say that the purpose of creating contract is not lawful? As we discussed earlier, if the agreement includes injury to a person or destruction of property of someone, then the object or the purpose is not lawful and such agreement will never get the support of law and it will never become the contract. The second last one is free consent. Free consent means parties should enter into the contract voluntarily. If they are not entering into the contract voluntarily, that means the contract cannot be considered as a valid contract. There are 5 situations in which we say that the free consent is missing. Those situations are coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. When you make the contract, you should make sure that your contract is not created because of these 5 situations. Otherwise, the contract will not be considered as a valid contract. And the last one is legal formalities. Now, some contracts have some legal formalities, and if we do not fulfill those formalities, the contract will never become a valid contract. So what are those legal formalities? What are the examples of that? We can take the example of property related contracts. Now there is a legal formality in the property related contracts that whenever the buying and selling of the property is happening, you have to pay a tax called as stamp duty. Apart from that, the contracts of buying and selling of property have to be in written format. They can never be in oral format. The dates on certain documents has to be there whenever the contract is created. So those kind of legal formalities are applicable. The legal formalities change from contract to contract, but if the formalities are there, we have to fulfill those formalities. Then only the contract is considered as valid contract. So these 10 are the essential conditions to create a valid contract. In the next video, we will see the first essential of valid contract, that is offer, in greater detail. Thank you all for joining. Have a nice day.